We're now going to apply a mask to the blend material that is applied to the back wall of our lab scene. If you're working continuously through the lessons, you should still have Chapter 4 Interior Mask 02 open. If you're just starting from this point, go ahead and open the file from the Chapter 4 Datasets directory. Make sure you have the Slate Material Editor open. If it's not open, choose the Slate Material Editor from the main toolbar flyout. With the Slate Material Editor open, we want to make sure the blend material is the active material. We can do this by double-clicking on the blend material title bar. Currently, the blend material contains the blue paint and the concrete materials, and it has been applied to the back wall. We are now going to apply a mask. There are a number of steps involved in this. It's important not to get bogged down in the individual steps. Keep your thoughts on the overall process of using a mask in the blend material. It's more important to understand the concepts of masking so that you understand how powerful and flexible the masking technique can be. In the Material Map Browser, we want to go to the Maps Rollout. Click on the plus to the left of the Maps Rollout to open it. Then we're going to open the standard rollout within the Maps Rollout. Click and drag the gradient ramp directly onto the input node for the mask channel of the blend material. If you watch what I'm doing, I'm dragging the gradient ramp out into the work area and placing my cursor on top of the input of the mask channel. When it turns green and I let go of the mouse button, it automatically links the output of the gradient ramp to the input of the mask. Right now, our work area might look a little bit disorganized, with the materials and maps lying on top of each other. In order to rearrange our layout and make it much neater, we want to click the Layout All Vertical option from the Slate Material Editor toolbar. That will rearrange all the nodes in our work area into a nice, neat layout. Double-click on the gradient ramp in the work area to access the gradient ramp attributes. This map is the gradient ramp made up initially from 3 colors: black, middle gray, and white. We're going to need to make some changes to the gradient ramp in order for it to work the way we want it to. The first thing we need to do is rotate it. If you look in the map sample window, you'll notice the gradient goes from left to right. We want it to go vertically from bottom to top. In order to change this, navigate to the coordinates rollout for the gradient ramp, locate the W option for the angle, and type in -90. Then press Enter to accept the value. If you now look in the sample window for the map gradient, it's now oriented vertically from top to bottom. The only thing you should see at this point is the change in the preview of the map in the map node. The gradient we see in the Attributes Editor is for editing only. We also don't want a smooth gradient like this one. We want a gradient that's solid. In the Gradients Ramp Parameters rollout, click on the down arrow to open up the interpolation options and choose Solid from the drop-down list. You'll notice that gives us black and gray colors, with a very sharp distinction between the two. There's no longer a smooth blended gradient. We need to change this, however, to black and white, so we have 100% of Material 1 and 100% of Material 2 showing on our surface as a result of the mask. When we first started out, we had 3 flags. Each of these little triangular marks in the gradient are known as flags, and they can be moved and also have other information associated with them. To change the gradient to be black and white, place your cursor over the middle flag, double-click on it. This opens the Color Selector dialog, and change this gray color to white by sliding the Value slider all the way to the right. Click OK to close the dialog. We're using this map because it's a map with a specific pattern, so we need to apply UVW mapping to this wall in order to work with this map. In the Perspective viewport, select the Wall_Fan01 object, go to the Modify panel. In the Modify panel, click the Select Modifiers drop-down list and select the UV Map modifier from the list. This will have the effect of projecting the black and white gradient onto the wall, and because our division line is at 50% in the gradient, the line will be halfway up the wall. Make sure the Perspective view is active and click on the Render Production button. Since we're only looking to find out if the materials are properly displayed on the wall, we don't have to let the rendering end. We can just let it go until we see the back wall and we can verify that our texture is applied correctly. The mask works with the black and white values of the map. showing the blue paint where the map is black and the concrete where the map is white. We can see in this rendering that it's split nicely, with the paint on one half the wall and concrete on the other. And right now it lines up fairly nicely with the multi-sub-object material on the side wall. Now that we can see the back wall, go ahead and cancel out of the render by pressing Escape on the keyboard. Once that stops, close the render window. You present your preliminary rendering to the client, and the client says, "That looks wonderful," except for the fact they don't want the split for the material to be right in the middle of the wall. They tell you they want the split to be closer to the floor than it is now, and that you'll have to move it in order to get approval for this rendering. So you tell them, "No problem. We'll have a new rendering for you in the morning, but it'll take some work. Let's fix what the client wants us to fix, and move the split in the wall between the two materials closer to the floor." In the Slate Material Editor, go back to the Gradient Ramp Parameters, and click and drag the middle flag over to the left. And if you look as you're dragging at the information in the upper right of the gradient area, you can see the position that you're dragging it to. Essentially, this is a percentage along the gradient, so the value would be from 0 to 100. In this case, let's try to position it about 30. Re-render the perspective view by clicking the Render button in the main toolbar. Remember, with the blend the way we have it configured, black is showing the blue paint, and white is showing the concrete material. We'll see in this rendering that the division line is now much closer to the floor. Keep in mind that flexibility is key to using this material. Press Escape to cancel the rendering and close the render dialog. So you go to the client and show them this rendering and they say, "Hey, that looks great." But they ask for us to make a change in the way the wall is painted. They want to have the bottom part concrete, then a stripe of blue paint in the middle, and concrete at the top. So again, we tell the client, "No problem, but it'll take some time." The first thing we need to do to accommodate the client's request is to change the colors of the existing flags. If we look at the gradient ramp right now, the first flag is black and the second flag is white, and that corresponds to the blue paint on the bottom and the concrete on the top. We want to create a ramp that has a section of black between two sections of white. Double-click in the gradient ramp on the very left-hand side flag. That will open the color selector for that flag. Drag the value slider all the way to the right. That will make it white. The next thing to do is double-click on the second flag from the left and change its value to black. Now we've switched the colors in the ramp. One last thing to do is add a fourth flag, which will be over towards the right-hand side of the gradient. In the gradient area, click once to create a new flag, then click on that flag and drag it to about the position of 70. Double-click on the flag and change the value to white by dragging the value slider all the way to the right. Now we have a mask that consists of a white stripe on the bottom, a black stripe horizontally running through the middle, and a white stripe on the top. Click OK to close the color selector dialog. Render the perspective viewport. So, keeping our mind on the overall concept of what we're doing, we're using a black and white mask to reveal one material of a blend material or the other. Remember, any image or map can be used as a mask. What you're concerned with are the gray values within that image or map. If we look at the rendering, we can see that we have a lower band of concrete, a middle band of blue paint, and an upper band of concrete, all based on the pattern we've created using this gradient ramp. This method is very flexible and efficient, and it does not depend on the geometry of the object. Press Ctrl+S to save the file.